Hello and welcome to another weekly update. I'm back at home in my study after last week's summit, which was brilliant. Good to catch up with everyone. Had a lot of fun and learned lots as well. And this week there's been no let up. It's been a very busy week, especially if you follow Microsoft Teams news, and we'll get to that in a moment. But one of the other things that happened last week was that I sat down with Pat Richard and recorded an episode of UC Inside Track, which was great fun. Pat's a great person to talk to, and the Inside Track podcast series is definitely worth a listen if you're into anything Skype for Business or Teams or anything around that space, anything UC. And it was a chance to sit down with Pat in person and talk through Teams development, Skype for Business development, UCMA, on-prem versus cloud, and the sort of things that I do at Modality Systems day to day. So you can get that by following the link to a blog post I wrote about it, which I'll put in the notes. You can also look for it on things like iTunes or TuneIn, Google Music Play, and places like that. So definitely worth a listen, I think, and the whole podcast series is worth subscribing to. All right, so Enterprise Connect was this week, and big announcements from Microsoft at Enterprise Connect around Teams. And in fact, Teams won some sort of award for best innovation with Microsoft Teams at Enterprise Connect this year, which was cool for the team, brilliant. And it also comes on their first birthday. It's the first anniversary, and that's worth just pausing and thinking about everything that's happened in the past 12 months. So Teams GA'd this time last year, and really that means that 2 years ago today, Teams didn't even exist. And so that's been a huge journey for everybody, for us, as users, for Microsoft, for the Teams team, for partners, and everybody in this UC space. And the rate of change has been phenomenal, and that's, I think, a credit to the Teams team and the way they've been working. The rate of innovation and the rate of change has been really unbelievable, and the amount of stuff they've done even in the last year has been incredible. So lots and lots to look back on and reflect on, lots more coming, and that some of those things were shown at Enterprise Connect. I won't go through them all, but there was some big changes to room systems, and that's worth looking at if you care about devices and hardware devices in meeting rooms and things. And then there's a whole section on Teams for intelligent communications, and I've talked about this before, but there are some integrations with Cortana that look really slick around making meeting experiences nicer, around being able to just pick up a phone and say, call Bob in sales or call so-and-so. Some really nice kind of innovations and nice features with that, with Cortana, and really bringing in some of that intelligent communication stuff. And I think we'll see more of that throughout the year. It's good to see those things shown off at places like Enterprise Connect, because it gets people thinking about what's possible. Because a few years ago, that stuff was just pipe dreams. You couldn't do it, and now it's coming. It's coming in an affordable package that everybody can use. So that's super exciting, and it plays into the stuff that I've been saying for a few months now around intelligence and AI and bots and communication and collaboration. So good to see these things coming. So we'll keep an eye on those as they go through from the kind of things that we've seen on stage coming into the product over time. Also this week, talking a little bit about AI and about machine learning and intelligence. Microsoft Research hit a AI milestone this week, and that is that their translation from English to Chinese is now as good as humans. So what that means is, for Chinese, for a given piece of text, machines doing that translation, the quality of that translation is now as good as if you had a paid, trained human to do that work for you. And that's a real milestone. If you think even a couple of years back about how dodgy translation was, now having it, as good as humans, but accessible to everybody in a way that is, not expensive and can, works everywhere and is instant. That's really powerful, and it's reminded me actually of something else that I saw during the Enterprise Connect keynote. I'll put a link to the Enterprise Connect keynote in the notes. Actually, I wasn't planning on doing that, but I'll do that because it's only about 40 minutes long, the keynote, but it's worth watching for the demos and for some of the messaging. One of the demos they showed in Teams was being able to take an IM or a message in a channel and translate it with it in the body in Teams, in the Teams client. Just be able to click the ellipsis and go down and click translate to English and have that message translated from whatever language it was, and you didn't need to know the language. It figured out what the language was and translated it into your native language. That's super powerful. That's great. It means that language is becoming less of a barrier, and that's really good. All right, so that's what I want to talk about this week. Enterprise Connect being the big kind of standout thing, really, and then some massive improvements in AI. Something else I'll leave you with though, it's not really to do with development, but I'm sure that many of you will find this useful, and that's a blog on Microsoft TechNet that the Skype for Business team have put out, and it's all around raising tickets with Microsoft. Now, if you're like me, if you're in this space, if you're working with customers and users and partners, you will have occasion and need to raise tickets with Microsoft, and specifically around Skype for Business. And when that happens, often Microsoft IT and Microsoft support will come back to you and say, please can you give us the logs that we need? And so it would be super helpful if we knew ahead of time what logs were needed. And this blog post is brilliant because it splits up all the different types of logs that there are and when they're useful, and in what particular scenarios different logs are useful. So for instance, I can look at this and I can see there's a whole section for Skype for Business client side. Okay, and then down there's types of problems. So things like user not able to sign in, client is crashing, IM related issues, AV related issues, meeting scheduling, and for each one there's a set of logs. So for instance, if Skype for Business client is crashing or hanging, then the logs that you need to figure out and send them are the client logs plus the event view logs plus the time of issue. So that's super useful in making tickets for Microsoft that are as useful as they can be first time around. And honestly, that's good for you because it increases the chance of your tickets being resolved earlier. So definitely worth a read, definitely worth bookmarking that, and maybe even building it into your internal ticketing support system so that your users can grab that information for you ahead of time. It's also a good indication of where to look for problems. So you could actually take this, ask your users to submit the same to you, and then see if you can work out the issue before raising a ticket with Microsoft. All right, that's everything I wanted to talk about this week. Have a great weekend, and I will speak to you again next week.